Hi, I'm Carl Franklin. This week I'm in Las Vegas for the DevIntersection conference. I'm going to be talking to those who know about the State of Blazor. Now I know this is a bit of an unusual format, but I assure you that you are watching Blazor Train! So early Sunday evening, the bridal unit and I boarded a train from Boston to Lost Wages. It was a very modern train. It didn't ride on rails at all. Well, it seems like it took forever to get there, mostly because of whining kids and a whimpering dog. But we finally made it. The train was impressive for sure, but not quite as impressive as the train we rented when I got there. It had the power of many horses. If you've never been to Las Vegas, you should. Put it on your bucket list. The weather is beautiful pretty much all year round. In the late afternoon sun, even the casinos look beautiful. Although, as Scott Hanselman told me, this place shouldn't really exist. Without water being piped in from Lake Mead, there'd be no life. God tries to wipe it out on a regular basis, but it persists. It's a little bit impressive to me. But thanks to the Hoover Dam and the water that flows from it, Vegas has trees that look like pineapples and pineapples that look like trees and water that tastes like pineapple and pineapple that tastes like pineapple. And then there's this guy. But he's not in Vegas. He just likes pineapples. The DevIntersection conference is held at the MGM Grand Convention Center at the MGM Grand Hotel. You can gamble, eat amazing food, drink your brains out, go swimming, and even play golf, all without leaving the property. You wouldn't know by looking around that the Grammy Awards just happened here last week. Now, I'm not saying that it's quiet by any means, but that's just how it goes. Sometimes it's mobbed and you see drunk celebrities getting in the elevator, and sometimes it's fairly laid back. On Tuesday morning, I stopped into Scott Hanselman's keynote entitled "The Cloud is a Joy." He took us through his pre-cloud experiences trying to host a website and all the problems that came with it, finishing up with amazing one-button push features of Azure that make cloud computing a pleasure.
All get together and learn the cloud. Before we do, we're just going to spend about 4 hours looking at this. Just remembering what it was like. Pour a little out for the homies. I used to stare at that for years. All right, so I guess the cloud is easier than ever. So let's do a brief, low-effort overview of Azure and how easy and fun and simple it is to get started with the cloud. All right, we're going to start in the upper left-hand corner. Here's the thing. That's Azure, right? And it's AWS, and it's Google, and it's everybody else, right? And they show us this, and it's overwhelming. In fact, during this short talk, 3 new Azure services are going to come out. And I'm going to be expected to give a talk about it next week. I have no idea what's going on. This is overwhelming.
I caught up with Scott after the keynote. Scott, I saw your keynote just now, and while you were talking about all the ways that you can save money in Azure by moving things around and not feeling like you have to use all this stuff, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, the first thing I'm going to do when I get back to my hotel room is spend the rest of the day reorganizing my Azure resources, my resource groups, and my app service plans. Thank you for that.
I'm glad. It makes a big difference. A lot of people just think that there's a one-to-one relationship between a website and an app service plan. But if you go and look at how much memory you're using, how much CPU you're using, I guarantee you've got 20 or 30% of memory. You're not packing them tight. Yeah. So I spent about a weekend looking at 4 or 5 resource groups, started moving things around. Sometimes you can go and manually move them with a command line. Sometimes you got to redeploy. But if you're doing the redeploy from something like Azure DevOps, it's not a huge deal, and you'll definitely save money. I think I saved about $100 a month.
Another thing I didn't realize is that, and this came back to bite me, when you have virtual hard disks that are part of VMs and you turn those VMs off, those virtual hard disks are still costing you money.
Right, virtual hard disks cost how much money they use
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you're using sparse disks
Yeah.
and that you're thinking about what they're living on. Are they living on premium storage? Are they living on standard storage? How fast do you need the access to those hard drives? And those hard drives use what are called IOPS to measure. It might be 300 IOPS or 500 or 5,000. And the faster the disk, the more it costs. And even at rest, you're paying for that storage. Just like when you have a storage unit, you're paying for your stuff.
So you can make a snapshot of those disks and then just delete the disks.
Or you can download them locally or keep them on your local NAS or wherever you want.
Cool. So what do you think is the intersection? Obviously, this is Blazor Train, and we're at DevIntersection. So what do you think is the intersection between Blazor and Azure? Like, how can Blazor developers get the most out of Azure?
So remember that there's like two kinds of Blazor, right? So there's Blazor WASM, which is going to run on the client side, which can then run as an Azure Static Web App, which is incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
So for Blazor folks that are using WASM, the combination, the killer combination is Azure Static Web Apps plus Azure Functions.
Yeah.
And you've got per second billing and effectively free hosting in your Azure Static Web Apps or GitHub pages or wherever. But then if you're going to do Blazor on the server, I think running it in containers or running in either app container instances or what they call app service containers is a really great way to do it. I run my podcast as a container inside of an app service on Linux. I think it's like 20 or 30 bucks a month. It's not a lot, but I have the ability to scale it out whenever I need to.
Right.
And with Blazor server people, they're going to want to be able to do that in case they become popular.
And with Blazor Server, if you really want to scale it, I've talked about this on the show. Is the recommended technique still to pop out to the SignalR service and make sure that the affinity is stuck on, so that now you can just have multiple.
I think you'd have to get pretty big.
Servers.
I think you'd have to get pretty darn big to need to go to SignalR, but that's an example. There are ways to scale out. You just need to know, can I do 50 people or 500 people or 5,000 people on this instance?
Yeah.
So capacity planning, I think, is essential.
So you and I were RDs when ASP.NET came out, right? When .NET came out. And we remember the old days of web forms, thinking how awesome this is. It's like Visual Basic for the web.
Sure.
And that was obviously a big hit because a lot of people used web forms. And now I see Blazor Server as the sort of hitting that, pushing those buttons for people, but doing it in a way that's really, really efficient.
Yeah. Blazor Server is a great place for web forms developers to find themselves. And people may hate on web forms. People hate on layers of abstraction that makes things easy.
Yes.
Just in my talk, people hate on automatic shift cars. They say, oh, no true developer doesn't drive a stick shift. People don't like Blazor because it's easy. But if you don't want to think about those things, give it a try.
The other thing is, what do you say to people who are still on the fence about whether Blazor is ready for prime time?
Blazor's been released now for what, a year, 18 months? Tons of websites are already live. Remember, Blazor Server and Blazor WASM just have that location transparency between where the runtime runs. But yeah, Blazor's been running very, very nicely, mostly on websites you don't realize are Blazor. Right? You go to Gmail or Outlook and you right-click and you view source, they're going to be running things like React and Angular, and you didn't think about whether or not they were ready for prime time. You just saw that they worked great.
Right.
So go to some of your favorite websites, discover that they're Blazor, and then realize that it is in fact ready.
And the cool thing is Blazor is that UI layer, right? It's everything below that is .NET. It's MVC. It's the same stuff.
And it's all built on web standards, open web. It's not Silverlight. It's not a plugin. It's just a DOM in memory. Like, it's using all the modern web standards. It's just that maybe some people aren't used to those modern standards.
Yeah. What do you say to people who look at the preview for .NET 7 and say, why should I use .NET 6 when .NET 7 preview is here?
Okay, I've heard some people complaining about this. Here's the deal. .NET comes out every November, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can tell you when .NET 8 and .NET 9 are going to come out. But there's no stress to go and upgrade now. What I did recently, personally, true story, is I just went from .NET 3, a long-term support, an LTS release, and I upgraded all of my sites to .NET 6, also an LTS release. That means that I'm going to chill on that LTS release for the next 2 or 3 years until .NET 8, the next LTS release. That's my decision. That's the thing that I did. If you are feeling stressed out in some way because there's a new version of .NET every year, I hate to tell you that Ubuntu comes out with a new version every 6 months. Right. There are regular LTSs as well. Yeah. This is kind of how software works. Really what you do is pick one that makes you happy. I picked an LTS release. I do my security updates because I put it in Azure App Service. I'm going to get those security updates for free. If you do a self-contained release, you can get security updates every time you do a build in Azure DevOps or Azure or GitHub. But yeah, you're not required to upgrade. Just pick one, stick on it for 3 or 4 years, and you'll be fine.
What do you think about .NET 6?
.NET 6 has been really great. Actually, just by upgrading from 3 to 6, I got perf benefits right off the bat. So everything's going to get like 10-15% faster. So that was the thing. And it was already getting faster when I moved from .NET Core 2 to 3. So yeah, you're getting quite significant upgrades. And on my blog, which went from .NET 2 to 4 and then now to 6, the perf upgrades have been significant.
Global usings. Love global
Yeah, I
using.
don't know why people are so pressed about that stuff.
I love it.
I like top-level programs. It's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Good to see you.
All right. I also stopped by Jeff Fritz's talk on Blazor. It was an introductory talk, and I was happy to see a full room. After the talk, I asked him about the state of Blazor. I mean, he would know. So what is the state of Blazor, Jeff?
Oh my gosh. Blazor's here with .NET 6. We've got long-term support for you both with Blazor WebAssembly and Blazor Server. You can build and run lightning-fast applications using your Razor-built components, both in the browser and on the server. We've got all kinds of new features out there that are going to allow you to work with the various elements of the browser, including the page title, the header area, and we've got great performance improvements for you that you're going to see if you're upgrading from a previous version of .NET 5 or even .NET Core 3.1. So we're really happy with those updates, and coming soon we've got updates so that you can run Blazor in a .NET MAUI application natively on Windows, Mac, iOS, or Android.
So Blazor is a good investment for you to learn UI-wise, because it will go across platform, and it's great for web everywhere, even PWAs.
Blazor is a fantastic investment because, yes, your components, your tools, your technology are going to be available and accessible on every device that has a browser. And whether it's a PWA, a progressive web app, it's a standard web application that's delivering content, everybody's going to get all the latest features as soon as they navigate to your application.
So people ask me all the time about the load time for Blazor WebAssembly, and has that been improved? And I don't know what to say. I'm like, well, you know, there's the linker and that kind of stuff, but what's the latest with load time?
So we've improved the Blazor linker. We've done a bit of work on tree shaking so that we're making that initial load time and the payload that you need to deliver to run a Blazor application even smaller. We've introduced Brotli compression so that it gets even smaller, even more compressed. So you're going to see anywhere between a 40 to 50% decrease in size using just the default template. We get it under 2 megabytes in that first delivery when you use the default template application. Now when you take that and compare that to some of the bigger applications out there that use JavaScript that we know and love, YouTube, Twitch, Gmail, there's a lot of JavaScript, and it's near the 2 meg range that's being downloaded and run in the browser. We think we're in a good place with that, but there's always room for more improvement.
And when you say tree shaking, that is essentially taking out code for elements that you don't use in the framework, right?
Absolutely. When we tree shake, we remove those other libraries that we don't need, that you aren't referencing in your application, so that you don't have to deploy it.
Yeah, that's great. And so I get this question a lot too, which is, you know, I work in the financial industry or in some other sensitive industry, and we don't want people to be able to read our code.
Yeah.
So if it's in WebAssembly, people can just, you know, pull up an ILDASM or something, or any kind of tool and look at the code. And I say the same thing. I don't want to get your opinion. And then that is, you know, JavaScript has the same problem. It's a browser problem. It's not a Blazor problem.
Anytime you ship code to a client, it can be decompiled, it can be interacted with, and they can look at exactly what you wrote. JavaScript, it's even more so easy to do that because all the code is sent clear text. Even if you do run it through an uglifier of some sort, all the code is sitting there live for folks to look at.
Yeah.
So If you're concerned about intellectual property, if you're concerned about the security of your application, you can actually run all of that content, all those Blazor components on the server with Blazor Server and only ship the HTML and user interface updates down to your customers, to your clients that need to interact with your application.
Yeah.
It's a great trade-off that gives you the best of both worlds.
And it scales really, really well, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. So let's talk about ahead of time compilation. I saw some stuff in .NET 7 that's coming that says this is being moved into the framework. What exactly does that mean for the future WebAssembly?
So when you're building an application with Blazor, it takes a little bit of time to start things up because we have to bootstrap and run the .NET runtime inside the browser. Well, we've got an option and a tool that's available to you. It's been available now for both .NET 5 and .NET 6 called Ahead of Time Compilation. And when you add this tool in, we'll actually build all the way down to the real WebAssembly bits instead of having to go through .NET runtime to actually execute code. The trade-off in making this full compilation is, well, it starts immediately in the browser, but it's going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to compile. And it's going to double or even triple the size of your application.
Right.
So, is there code that you need to run immediately, that you need to run without any kind of hiccups, and you want to optimize for speed? Go and let's talk about doing ahead of time compilation. But you're going to trade off a little bit of size and delivery time. So coming with .NET 7, we're looking at investigating and making that ahead of time compilation something that you can trade off and work with in different parts of your application. So if there is something that's a big algorithm that you want to run faster, maybe we can just compile that part, reference and load that so you can get the advantages of having the very small compressed libraries that run on .NET runtime. Right. And still reach into that algorithm that's been optimized to run on WebAssembly.
And is that going to work with pre-rendering in WebAssembly as well? Because that's another strategy people can use to get the, to the first page quickly.
So pre-rendering is something that happens on the server. That's going to happen over there. Not sure where we're going to land with that. They're still developing and building the technology. Blazor has so much going for it. There's a lot of investment coming right now to get it working as a fantastic user interface option when you're building with .NET MAUI. If you're building, you're going to be able to see the WebView 2 component that's available as part of .NET MAUI to get your Blazor application running natively on your favorite operating system. And we're going to make that same component available for Windows Forms, for WPF, so that you can put your Blazor application components into those applications, and that even gives you an on-ramp to maybe swap out at some point from WPF or Windows Forms to .NET MAUI, which then means your native application that was Battleship Gray for 5, 10, 15 years and running on everybody's desktop, well, now you can migrate it to .NET MAUI and deploy it out to folks' tablets, their iPads, and their Android tablets. Cool stuff.
I have one more question for you.
Sure.
What's your opinion of using MVVM with Blazor?
So this is an interesting thing that the architecture folks are always want to know and they want to build with. And when you think about MVVM, the capabilities of introducing a view model and interacting with user interface, Blazor already does that. So when you try to introduce another MVVM framework on it, it's really reinventing the wheel. You don't need it. You already have a lot of those capabilities. Let's just embrace and use Blazor with some code behind classes the way it was already built.
Okay, very good.
The day after this video is published, I'll be doing a full-day workshop here on advanced Blazor topics, all of which I've covered on Blazor Train. Richard Campbell and I always do the closing session, at which we make swag recipients answer trivia questions about .NET, SQL, JavaScript, and of course, .NET Rocks. DevIntersection has lots of other content, not just Blazor. James Montemagno did a workshop on MAUI that was also well attended. As you may know, James and I go way back to 2013, when he came with Richard and me on a .NET Rocks road trip across America. It was really great to be among people at a conference again, and you can't complain about the location. If you're going to be in the States, I'd highly recommend coming to the next DevIntersection conference. You won't be disappointed.
Whoa, whoa! Lame! Hey, keep it down over there.
Blazor Train.
Now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh. Wah, wah.